Before we get started, let me just tell you everything I need to do Atlas stones well. First of all, grip shirt is very helpful so that stone doesn't slide on your stomach. Next, you're gonna want a crappy pair of shorts that are already dirty because your shorts will get ruined. Next, we're gonna want stone sleeves. That is not a mandatory, but very helpful, and I'll go over that in a minute. You're gonna want some sort of spray adhesive. Again, I'll go over that in a minute. Multiple different types of tacky is imperative, and then something to get the tacky off of you. WD-40 works well. Any sort of vegetable oil works well at all. And then a towel so you can wipe the tacky off after you're done. If you have all those things, you're ready to get started. Of course, an assortment of Atlas stones is useful. The Atlas stones I have here, they start at 45 kilos and they go all the way up to 220 kilos. So I'm gonna be working up to that big stone today, working on some technique, and of course sharing with you guys everything that I'm thinking along the way. Right, now we're gonna put on our stone sleeves. It's not imperative to have them, but what I've found with the sleeves is that the tacky doesn't come off of my skin. You put these sleeves on, they're nice and secure to your arm. It's gonna be a more consistent application of the tacky. This is stuff that I have learned the hard way. I've made many mistakes on tacky and just getting tacky wrong, and this has been a pretty tried and true system for me ever since I started using these sleeves. So first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna get some sort of adhesive spray. This is for carpets, for fabrics, for cars, and sometimes we don't do the healthiest thing in strongman, but it is mandatory. So I'm just gonna cover my forearm with this, and then that's gonna provide a nice sticky surface for the stones to be able to stick on. One important thing to note is you'll see some of the guys who are the best in the world at Atlas stones not use stone sleeves, and don't look at people like that and think that means that not using stone sleeves is better. Sometimes people are just so freaky good at an event, like Tom Stoltman, that they just don't even need it. They don't need that much tacky. They're just so good at the Atlas stones that it's basically a non-event. If you're someone like me, using every advantage possible is going to be useful. So with these sleeves, I'm gonna be looking to get the flat portion of the sleeve on my forearm, of course, and then I'll have to get a friend to help me wrap these around. Yep, just to make it nice and tight, and then pull it around and stick it on as best you can. Cool. Good. Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Now, if you are using stone sleeves, it's important that your wrists have good mobility and your elbows have good mobility. Now, that is the base, but the worst thing that could possibly happen is for the stone sleeves to slip off of your arm, which is why I always secure with duct tape. Now, some people use duct tape alone, but I've found that's pretty easy to slip off of your skin if you start to sweat. So I'm gonna do a few loops of duct tape around my wrist. Doesn't have to be the prettiest thing in the world, just trying to get the job done. Now, a little pro tip, if you're gonna do this, just take this guy and make a really obvious endpoint. Because once you get tacky all over it, it's gonna be very hard for you to get off. All right. Then same thing up at the elbow. Of course, the elbow side is gonna be more important because the stones are gonna be pulling down on the sleeves. So we wanna make sure we get this duct tape as tight as possible. And again, get that little notch there. All right, that feels pretty secure. If these aren't secure, they're only gonna work against you. The tacky will go on here, they'll slide off of you, and then you've got nothing left for the stone. Now, I'll start with a 140 kilo stone just to get a few reps and get warm. But we're gonna have to choose some tacky. And this is very important to have a whole bunch of different types of tacky because different conditions are gonna be best for different types. So let's just say first, we've got Cerberus tacky here. We've got grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4. And you can see if I grab the grade 2, which is made for colder conditions, it's inherently a more liquid substance. So if I poke my finger in there, you can see that it's gonna string all the way out like that. If I grab the grade 3, I'll try the same thing. It strings as well, but see how it's coming off in one piece? It's not stringing at all. If we grab the grade 4, made for hotter weather, I go to grab it, and it stays in the tub. It doesn't really come onto me all that much. Now, if you choose a tacky that's too solid, it's gonna be hard to get onto you and it's gonna come off of you really easy. If you choose a tacky that's too liquid, it's just gonna slip and it's gonna act more like an oil than a tacky. Now, I also have Elite Tacky, just a different form, and this isn't the same as the Cerberus Tacky. If you go to poke this one, it's not gonna come out at all. But these ones, you have to put into the microwave. The microwave will then make them looser, and then you apply. The other one I have is Spider Tacky. I don't use a huge amount of this, and I find it better for training because you can see how stringy it is. And it's about maybe 22 degrees out today. It's not that hot, but this is still starting to get soupy. It'd be really easy in hot weather for this guy to turn into a liquid. So today, based on how they're moving, I'm thinking Cerberus grade 3 is gonna be the best bet because it's coming out, it's sticking to me well, it's stringing a little bit, but it doesn't feel soupy at all. So all we're gonna do is grab a nice big chunk of that. And there's no real neat way to do this. It's gonna get on the tub, and it's gonna be a bit of a pain. There's conflicting ideas on how you'd like to spread your tacky, but one thing that I've found really important is to take time working it in. If you put it onto your skin and you try to lift stones right away, you're gonna end up with the tacky completely coming off of you and not sticking to your skin at all. It'll just go to the stone, and then you're sort of up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. Now, some people say that you should spread like this, and some people say that you should more kind of create these sticky web-like structures. Personally, I haven't found one superior to the other. I just find what's really important is that it's worked in for quite a long time. Now, I've got a lot of tacky on right now, and that is intentional because I don't like to reapply tacky if I don't have to more replicate shows when we're doing stone runs of usually 5 or 6 stones. When I'm putting the tacky on, some of the big things I'm looking for is that I have coverage on my entire hand. Whenever we put force into anything, you got to think you're skipping one joint and that's where you're feeling that force. So if the tacky comes off of your hands or it's not applied well on your hands, go past your wrists, you're gonna feel that in your elbow. And this is where we talk about bicep rupture. There's also some technical things with bicep ruptures that I'll go over as I start to lift the stone.
Do you know exactly what tacky is and like what's it made out of to make it this sticky, and are they all the same, or is it?
For the most part, they're the same. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it's like a pine resin of sorts, and they put different things in with it. Like all of the substances are very different. Like Cerberus tacky to Elite tacky is so different, where Elite tacky, when it's on well, it'll still be clumped up all over, but it doesn't move. Where this stuff is literally a thin layer on you everywhere. And it doesn't clump at all. I'll give you some technique after. I'm just gonna hit 3 reps here. Get into my work a little bit. Dude, feels really good today. I would say in comp, I would want to spend a good 10 minutes getting the tacky worked in before I actually went to do something, which by the way, is not what most people like to do. Most people say tacky on, straight away go lift, but for me, that just hasn't proven to be very successful. Right, now first thing when you're stepping up to a stone, you want to make sure that your forefoot is even with the center of the stone. What you see a lot is people start back behind, they lift, and as soon as the stone comes off the ground, then it comes into them, and then they lift up. But if you can really cover the stone, it just becomes like an eccentric or a deficit deadlift, which helps you tremendously. When you put your hands on the stone, your goal is to put as much force in your forearms as possible and as little force through your hands as possible. Of course, you're gonna be putting force through your hands, but forearms on the stone first, and you wanna drive the ulnar side, or the pinky side of your forearm into the stone, drive that into the stone, and then scoop the stone with your hands, and then from there, you're just squeezing and then standing up. You wanna round over, and you wanna get your chest down as close to the stone as possible. That's the first half. I'll try to show you as best I can. This is now 200 kilo stone. We're gonna move up to the 220. I'll go over some cues from the lap to the extension, and hopefully you can pull something from that. Right, now once you get the stone into your lap, really the first goal is for the stone to pass your knees. But once it passes your knees, you wanna keep deadlifting until you can't. The higher you get that stone, the better off you're going to be. Then when you sit, one thing you'll notice I do is I'll always bring my feet a little bit closer together. The reason being, wide feet mean the stone is gonna sit low in your lap. Close feet mean it's gonna sit higher on your quads. It's gonna be easier to extend out. Then you're gonna put your hands over top the stone like 10 and 2, like you're driving. And then your goal should be to dive your knees underneath the stone and roll the stone up your body and then load. You don't wanna be trying to front squat the stone because eventually you're just gonna get to a weight that's completely impossible for you to front squat. Mechanically, if this stone is 21 inches, the center of mass of the stone is 10.5 inches in front of me. So you can't say it's a 220 kilo stone, I can front squat 220, no problem. We gotta then take the moment on that that stone is way far away, and now we're talking about a front squat of maybe 300 kilos to be able to front squat that stone. Alternatively, you drive your knees underneath, you roll the stone up your body, get onto your toes, throw your head back. Much easier to keep that stone over your center of mass, and you're simply rolling it and then thrusting it through. I'll try to show you that here. It's funny, heavy stones and light stones, totally different technique-wise. Because you can get away with so much on a light stone, just to do them fast. But on a heavy stone, you gotta dial it in. And it's almost like you gotta go through a training process of 4 to 6 weeks with heavy stones before like it actually starts to feel like it should. So this is really week 1 for me, heavy stones. And this guy's 220 kilos. I think that's about 485. So round up, say nearly 500. My goal when it comes around to competition in a couple of months is to be able to hit at least 550 for a couple of reps. And that should put me in really good stead compared to all the other guys. Easy. Just easy. Tons more there. Fantastic. That's heavy stones. I'm gonna get into light stones. Let's talk about getting your one motion right.
What's going on with the arm sleeve here?
Yeah, so we ran out of duct tape, and this is actually a perfect example of why. And I made a mistake. You should always start putting duct tape up top and finish on the bottom because up top is way more important. So you can see as we've gone, this one has stayed quite good, but this one has slipped down probably 2 or 3 inches, and you can see now the material is bunching up. So we're gonna have 2 problems if I were to continue doing heavy stones. This material now has a bit of movement to it. That's not helpful at all. And second, there's a risk of this totally sliding off. And if it does, I'm left with a bare forearm and you're not gonna be able to do anything impressive. So extra points on why the tape is very useful. Now, the counter to, well, why don't you just not use sleeves? With how much I'm sweating right now, if I didn't have sleeves on, my arm would be wet and we'd have to completely call the stone session off. So for me and for anyone else who sweats a lot, it's totally mandatory. Now, more often than not, in competition, we have stone runs. We don't just have one stone lifted. So we have to practice not only lifting the stone, but lifting it efficiently, which is where one motioning stones come in. One motion means that instead of picking it, going into your lap, resetting your hands, and then lifting, you just pick it off the ground, shoot your knees under, and in one motion, you get that over. I'm gonna do this with the 140 kilo stone, and I'll give you a little bit of technique tips afterwards. Boom, perfect. Effort, genuinely, might have been a 5 out of 10 there. Just a little bit of light work. Now let me do one and I'll talk through it with you guys. So, the real key to one motioning a stone well, and again, I've had to learn this by asking people and by learning the hard way. You need the stone to sit as high up on your chest as possible. Meaning that when you're down at the stone, you actually want to pull yourself in. So that if you can, you get your stone right on your chest. If you don't, as soon as you stand up, it's gonna sit in your hips, and you have a long way to try to pull that stone all the way up. Everything else about the setup is the same. The only other difference in execution is the transition. Instead of to the knees, drop your hips, you're gonna go to the knees, shoot the knees forward, and thrust the hips forward at the same time. That should then get the stone rolling up your body. So same setup position, balls of the feet even with middle of the stone. Dig my forearms into the stone, but now pulling my chest into the stone, and I'm gonna shoot my knees underneath once it passes my knees. You can see this way, there's no issue with getting height on the stone, no issue with efficiency. The thing though is, this is a higher risk way to do it, much easier to make a mistake, and it's really only marginally faster. So you make your decision on how you like to treat your stone runs. Safe bet is just do them normally and get efficient at the normal 2 motion. Hopefully you guys learned something. We're gonna clean off the tacky now and get on with the rest of our day. Cleaning off tacky is the worst part of strongman. I'll show you my tricks on how I get it done. Stone sleeve back on the yoke. And I've never felt as though I needed to clean off my stone sleeves. There's always residual tacky, of course, but I never seem to find that a problem session over session. Now, this is where friend usually comes in handy, but let's pretend like we're by ourselves. What I do is I would grab the towel, I would grab my WD-40, and then I would spray a whole lot of the WD-40 into the towel. And I get a good chunk of this towel wet. And from there, pat that down until I get tacky on it. Now I take that wet spot and I can start to rub the tacky off. And it should come off relatively easily. It's still a pain in the ass, and you'll probably still find little chunks in you for the next 24 hours. But this is the best way that I know to go about it. Oh, it's really hard at shows when you're done stones. 9 times out of 10, stones are the last event. And so you've just finished, you've got tacky all over, you're out of breath, someone rushes you, get the tacky off because you got the podium. The podium is right now, we gotta go. And you're like, I don't want tacky on my trophy. It's always a big panic. If you ever watch John's live shows, pay close attention at the end, and it's a little bit of chaos. I'm gonna keep plugging away here. Not too much else interesting to watch or to say. Thank you very much for watching this. If you want more educational strongman stuff, let me know in the comments. As per usual, hit the subscribe button. If you want to support the channel, getting new merch is the best way to do that, or getting one of my programs. Both those are linked in the description. All the programs are written by me, and the merch is of course designed by my team, and we donate back some of the profits to gyms across the world. Thank you very much, guys. We'll catch you next time. As per usual, lift heavy and be kind.